Step into the enchanting realms of Middle-earth, with realms revealed. Join us on a journey where darkness looms and the fate of all hangs in the balance. In this episode, we unveil the captivating tale of Sauron, the Dark Lord whose name strikes fear into the hearts of all who hear it. From his humble beginnings to his rise to power and eventual downfall, immerse yourself in the rich lore of Tolkien's world as we uncover the secrets behind Sauron's malevolent schemes. Let's dive in. The First Age. The Rise of Maiar. Origins of Sauron. In the beginning, Sauron was not the dark, fearsome entity known throughout Middle-earth. He was Maiar, a Maia of Aulë, the Vala of craftsmanship and smithing. Maiar possessed great skill and a desire for order, beauty, and perfection. His talents were unparalleled among the Maiar, and he found joy in creating and shaping the world. However, Maiar's desire for order began to twist into a craving for control and power. Melkor, the first Dark Lord, who later became Morgoth, saw potential in Maiar's ambition. Melkor, a Vala who had turned against the other Valar and sought to dominate Middle-earth, seduced Maiar with promises of greater power and influence. Maiar, lured by the vision of imposing his own order on the world, succumbed to Melkor's temptations and became his most trusted lieutenant, taking the name Sauron. In all the deeds of Melkor the Morgoth upon Ardor, in his vast works and in the deceits of his cunning, Sauron had a part, and was only less evil than his master, in that for long he served another and not himself. Servant of Morgoth. Under Morgoth's tutelage, his talents were further honed and his powers grew. He became a master of sorcery and deception, spreading fear and corruption across the lands. He established his fortress on the Isle of Tol in Gorhorth, the Isle of Werewolves, where he ruled with terror and brutality. He unleashed dreadful creatures and committed atrocities that earned him infamy among the free peoples of Middle-earth. Throughout the First Age, he was a central figure in Morgoth's wars against the elves and men. He orchestrated invasions, captured territories, and inflicted unspeakable horrors upon his enemies. Yet, with the eventual defeat of Morgoth by the Valar at the end of the First Age, Sauron chose to flee and hide, avoiding the judgment that befell his master. The Second Age. The deceptive Maiar. The forging of the Rings of Power. The beginning of the Second Age saw Sauron adopting a new strategy. He took on a fair and pleasing guise, presenting himself as Annatar, the Lord of Gifts. Disguised in this form, he approached the elves, particularly those of a region led by Celebrimbor, a descendant of Fëanor. Sauron, feigning benevolence and wisdom, shared his knowledge of ring crafting with them, for Sauron took to himself the name of Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, and he was fair to look upon, and the elves were aware when they had dealings with him that he was not one of the Eldar. But they did not guess that he was a servant of the enemy. The elves, eager to enhance their own abilities and protect their realms, accepted Sauron's guidance. Under his influence, they forged the Rings of Power, powerful artifacts designed to preserve and enhance their abilities. However, unbeknownst to them, he secretly forged the One Ring in the fires of Mount Doom. This master ring had the power to dominate all the other rings and their bearers, binding them to Sauron's will. The War of the Elves and Sauron. When the elves donned their rings, they immediately sensed his treachery. Realizing they had been deceived, they removed their rings and thwarted his initial plan to dominate them. Enraged, he launched a brutal war against the elves, seeking to reclaim the Rings of Power and assert his dominion. The war was devastating. His forces laid waste to the realm of Eregion, and Celebrimbor was captured and tortured to death. Despite the ferocity of Sauron's assault, the elves, led by Gil-galad and Elrond, managed to resist and drive back his armies with the help of the Numenorians, powerful men from the island kingdom of Numenor. But Sauron of Mordor assailed them, and they had no warning of him, and he came against them with open war, and they were ill provided to meet him. The downfall of Numenor. His defeat in the War of the Elves and Sauron did not spell the end of his ambitions. He turned his attention to Numenor, the mightiest kingdom of men. Through cunning and manipulation, he allowed himself to be captured and taken to Numenor as a prisoner. There, he quickly gained the trust and favor of Ar-Pharazôn, the Numenorian king. It had been better for him if he had remained in hiding, for a sea-flooded Numenor came, and the throne of Numenor was taken, and the scepter of Numenor was broken, and the life of Numenor was ended. Using his charisma and dark influence, he corrupted the Numenorians, turning them against the Valar and inciting them to worship Morgoth. He convinced Ar-Pharazôn to sail against the Valar in a bid for immortality, leading to the catastrophic downfall of Numenor. The island was swallowed by the sea, and his physical form was destroyed. However, his spirit endured, and he fled back to Middle-earth, intent on rebuilding his power. The Third Age. The Dark Lord's return. The rebuilding of power. Back in Middle-earth, Sauron returned to Mordor and began rebuilding his strength. He constructed the Dark Tower of Barad-dûr, a symbol of his renewed might and malice. From this fortress, he gathered armies of orcs, trolls, and other foul creatures, preparing for a new era of darkness. In that time, Sauron began to take shape again, and he inhabited the Dark Tower once more. Great were his labors, for he sought ever for news of the One Ring, and for that which was lost long ago. Now he deemed that it was indeed lost forever. His influence spread far and wide. He enslaved the peoples of the East and South, making them his allies. He also created the Black Speech, a language to unify his followers under his malevolent banner. The Dark Lord's power grew steadily, and his presence became an ever-looming threat to the free peoples of Middle-earth. The War of the Last Alliance. In response to his growing menace, the elves and men formed the Last Alliance, led by Gil-galad, the Elven King, and Elendil, the High King of Gondor and Honor. Their combined forces marched on Mordor in a bid to end Sauron's tyranny once and for all. The War of the Last Alliance culminated in a climactic battle on the plains of Dol-gulad and the siege of Barad-dûr. After a long and grueling fight, Sauron himself entered the fray, slaying Gil-galad and Elendil. However, Isildur, Elendil's son, took up his father's broken sword, Narsil, and cut the One Ring from his hand, defeating him. But Sauron was not of mortal flesh, and though he was robbed now of that shape in which he had wrought so great an evil, so that he could never again appear fair to the eyes of men, yet his spirit arose out of the deep and passed as a shadow and a black wind over the sea, and came back to Middle-earth and to Mordor, that was his home. Sauron's physical form was destroyed, and his spirit dispersed. However, because the One Ring was not destroyed, his essence lingered, and his malevolent will continued to influence the world. The shadow in Dol-gulad. Centuries passed, and his spirit remained dormant, biding its time. In the Third Age, he resurfaced in the guise of the Necromancer, establishing a stronghold in Dol-gulad in southern Mirkwood. From there, he began to rebuild his strength and spread his shadow across the land. There it was that his evil spirit was driven back into the void, and he could not yet again take bodily shape, but his heart was at work, and he wore out the long years in the science of the East, scheming and growing in power, until the day should come when he might rule again in strength. The White Council, comprised of powerful beings such as Saruman, Gandalf, and Galadriel, became aware of the growing threat in Dol-gulad. They attacked the fortress, forcing Sauron to flee. However, this was part of his plan, as he returned to Mordor, where he could openly declare himself and rebuild Barad-dûr. The quest for the One Ring. The Ring's influence. The One Ring, lost for centuries, had a dark and malevolent will of its own. It sought to return to its master, influencing those who came into contact with it. After Isildur's death, the ring was lost in the Anduin River, eventually finding its way to Gollum, who kept it for centuries, twisted and consumed by its power. The ring eventually passed to Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit of the Shire, who unwittingly took it on his adventure. Its presence brought Sauron's attention back to the Shire, setting the stage for the events that would unfold. The Fellowship of the Ring. With the resurgence of his power, a council was called in Rivendell to decide the fate of the One Ring. It was determined that the ring must be destroyed, and the only way to do so was to cast it into the fires of Mount Doom, where it was forged. A fellowship was formed to undertake this perilous quest. Led by Frodo Baggins, the fellowship included Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf, Boromir, and Frodo's hobbit companions Sam, Merry, and Pippin. Their journey was fraught with danger, as Sauron's minions, the Ringwraiths, Nazgul, relentlessly pursued them. The Ring-bearer is setting out on the quest of Mount Doom. On him alone is any charge laid, neither to cast away the ring, nor to deliver it to any servant of the enemy, nor indeed to let any handle it, save members of the company and the council, and only then in gravest need. The War of the Ring. As the Fellowship made its way towards Mordor, the War of the Ring erupted across Middle-earth. Major battles were fought, such as the Battle of Helm's Deep and the Siege of Gondor. Sauron's forces, led by his lieutenants, the Witch King of Angmar and other Nazgul, brought devastation and despair to the free peoples. And so it was that Aragorn and his companions passed over the river Anduin and came to the land of Gondor, and there they took up the fight against the enemy. Despite the overwhelming odds, the defenders of Middle-earth held firm. Aragorn, heir to the throne of Gondor, emerged as a leader, rallying the forces of men to resist his onslaught. The courage and determination of the free peoples became a beacon of hope in the face of overwhelming darkness. The Fall of Sauron. The climax of his saga came with the final confrontation at the Black Gate of Mordor. The armies of the West, led by Aragorn and his allies, marched on the Black Gate to distract Sauron and give Frodo and Sam a chance to reach Mount Doom. For as long as that darkness endured, Aragorn stood silent and unmoving, and the host of Mordor stood also, watching and waiting. In the heart of Mount Doom, Frodo struggled against the overwhelming power of the ring. At the last moment, he succumbed to its allure, claiming it for himself. However, Gollum, driven by his own obsession, attacked Frodo and bit off his finger, seizing the ring. In his delirious joy, Gollum stumbled and fell into the fiery chasm, destroying the ring and himself. The aftermath. With the destruction of the One Ring, his power was irrevocably broken. Barad-dûr crumbled, and his armies were scattered and defeated. The Dark Lord's spirit was finally vanquished, unable to take form or influence the world any longer. And as the captains gazed south to the land of Mordor, it seemed to them that, black against the pall of cloud, there rose a huge shape of shadow, impenetrable, lightning-crowned, filling all the sky. Enormous it reared above the world, and stretched out towards them a vast, threatening hand, terrible but impotent. For even as it leaned over them, a great wind took it, and it was all blown away, and passed, and then a hush fell. The fall of Sauron marked the end of the Third Age and the beginning of the Fourth Age, an era of peace and renewal for Middle-earth. The kingdoms of men flourished under the rule of King Aragorn, and the elves began their journey to the Undying Lands, leaving Middle-earth in the hands of men. His legacy is a testament to the dangers of unchecked ambition and the corrupting influence of power. His rise and fall serve as a reminder of the resilience and courage of the free peoples of Middle-earth, who stood against his darkness time and again. Though his shadow has passed, the tales of his tyranny and the heroism that opposed it endure, etched into the history of Middle-earth. It is a saga of the eternal struggle between light and shadow, of hope prevailing over despair, and of the unyielding spirit of those who fight for freedom and peace. As the shadow that was Sauron fades into legend, the stories of bravery and sacrifice remain, inspiring generations to come. Share your thoughts on Sauron in the comments below. What part of his story intrigues you the most? Until next time, keep exploring, keep discovering, and keep the spirit of adventure alive. Realms Revealed signing off.